Hello, everyone. This is Just a Dad, and you're listening to Coffee with Dad podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Just a Dad. Tonight, I got a very special guest, Greg Neisler, teacher at Panhandle School District. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Tom. Appreciate you having me today.
Well, thank you for coming tonight after work. You had a busy day.
Yeah, I think so. It's a good thing I came today, because if I come yesterday, I might not have been as good a mood. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, tell everybody what you do.
Well, I teach 6th grade. Done that for 26 years. I teach English language arts and social studies. So I have the 6th graders about half the day, then they transfer over to the other 6th grade section where they have math and science, which happens to be my wife's classroom.
Okay.
So, yeah, I teach across the hall from
Thank you
my
for
wife.
what you do. I mean, teachers are it's a hard job, and it's just thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. So some days are more stressful than others, but it's a job that I love.
So tonight we made ourselves a Just a Dad coffee. It's my coffee that's going to be coming out, Just a Dad Simple Sip. So here's our coffee.
You offered me some, and I've been sipping on it pretty quickly because I usually don't drink coffee in the afternoon.
I know.
Only usually in the morning. So
Yeah, we'll be up all night.
yeah, well, no, I can sleep through anything. Just don't let me fall asleep now.
So tell me a little bit about coffee, your experiences, maybe when it started. When was your first cup of coffee, and maybe when your parents or grandparents drank coffee?
Well, that's really interesting, because if you don't mind, I'd like to tell a little something about why that's so interesting to me. Is because we read a book in 6th grade, a novel called Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh, yeah.
And they go, the dad and grandpa and the boy that's a middle school age kid, they go on a coon hunting trip. And the middle school age kid, they're around a campfire, reaches for a cup of coffee, notices that there's 3 cups set out, and there's only 3 of them, so he grabs a cup. And it means nothing to the 6th graders now.
Yeah.
But we did try to talk, us old-timers, try to talk about how coffee drinking isn't the same as what it was whenever I grew up. I'm 60, and it was a rite of passage.
Really?
To get to drink coffee, because your parents and grandparents discouraged it until you got older for some reason. I have no idea.
Right.
They'd have sayings like, it'll, turn your feet colors, or it'll grow hair on your chest too quick, or whatever. And they'd come up with these sayings, and you're a little kid, and you just kind of, okay, I'll wait. And so, whenever you did get to drink that first coffee, it was a big deal. And I guess I don't remember the exact time,
right,
but I have a feeling it was probably back at one of your old stomping grounds at Mel's Bakery.
Oh, Mel's Bakery.
Mel's Bakery. Oh, yeah. That brings back good memories, doesn't it?
That place was very special.
It is. It is. It's down. It turned into kind of maybe a secondhand shop for a while.
It's been demolished. It's not there anymore. But you talk about memories at my dad would take me in the back where Mel made the donuts. For some reason, Dad was up at 2 or 3 in the morning, maybe 4 or 5, I don't know. But we would go back in the back where he was making the donuts before everybody was there. He had that oven fired up. And that flour was just flying in the air, and
it was. You go in the back door. You go in the back door, and my dad took me through there too, and it was always such a high quality product.
Yes.
And I remember Dad, being my dad was a feed salesman, and so he appreciated high quality because. He felt like he worked for a company that had a very high quality product. And he asked Mel his secret, why is it so different and everything? And he said, well, one thing is you use high quality oil, and you change it more than you think you even need to keep that fresh oil, to keep things fresh. And, the older you get and your taste buds get, more experienced, I guess, you can really tell if you're eating something from maybe a little old or stale oil, and it was a big part of it. And that was just one of the things he'd give up.
Then you go up to the front part. You imagine how much coffee went through that little coffee shop.
it seemed like a huge place when I was a little kid,
But it was so small.
it was tiny.
It was tiny.
But it was always packed.
Always packed.
Always.
And that was a rite of passage. Probably, I'm going to go get my coffee today.
It was. And I know that was where it was because I always started off whenever I was probably low high school, I'd always still drink hot chocolate there. And so then you were drinking out of a mug and you felt like, okay, Dad went up there and saw some of his customers, and just as he got older, he enjoyed that just as his routine. And then in the summers, I'd get to go with him on selling feed and we'd stop there first. And then I felt like I belonged. And then one day I just kind of said, can I order a cup of coffee? And he said, why not? And so, you felt like, hey, I arrived.
Yeah.
I finally arrived. Where kids today, when you talk to these sixth graders, they don't get that at all because Starbucks and, every restaurant you go through, drive-through or whatever is promoting something on it. And all of them, they have all these specialty coffees and everything.
And they've got so much milk and sugar in them.
Yeah.
You're not even really tasting the coffee. You're getting the caffeine, but you're not tasting the coffee.
I admit I had to put sugar, a couple of scoops in or teaspoons in when I first started.
Okay.
But that went away by college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is such a special. I'm glad you had that same memory. We both grew up in Witt.
Yes.
I don't remember you. You were in the country and I was in the town.
Plus, I went to Nokomis and it didn't go to Witt. We were in Nokomis School District.
Yeah, but that is.
So it was right there. But it was a fun stop, and it was disappointing whenever, Mel retired. And, I think he did cakes for a while. Wedding cakes were huge.
Wedding cakes were amazing.
Yeah. Growing up, Dad was very successful in what he did, but when we started out, we were pretty poor.
Yeah.
And I remember my 5-year-old birthday party, I wanted a Batman on my cake. And that was when that cartoon Batman of the 60s was going on, and the oof and the pow and all that with the graphics on it. And so Dad, or I can't remember who went to pick it up. And I think it was my dad and we went to pick it up, and we came home, and I was so excited. I went running through our driveway, and I was yelling, Batman, Batman, and I was running, and I was turning and looking somewhere, and I ran flat into the side of our car that was parked out there, fell back and hit my head and busted my head open. And so it was right before my fifth birthday, and it was quite a memory because that cake that we'd went and bought, I liked the Batman, but Mom and Dad were proud of it because they'd afforded to buy a Mel's cake for me for my birthday. So that was kind of a big deal.
That was definitely a big deal.
Yeah.
It tasted good too.
Yeah, I don't remember. I liked the Batman, but as I got older and then Mel retired and just doing cakes, you savored every minute when you got one, when you got a bite of it.
He had those big old industrial bun coffee makers up there.
Were they?
Yeah,
I didn't remember.
Vaguely remember them, but that style. I think everybody probably had, those companies all had big bun coffee makers.
Yeah.
You remember what coffee maker your mom and dad had?
Well, I know my dad drank coffee. My mom wouldn't touch it.
Okay.
My grandparents that I was over that lived down the road, which were my mom's parents, they drank coffee a lot. They had it morning, noon, and night, probably. Wow. They drank coffee a lot. There was always a percolating pot, the silver pot with the glass percolator.
On the stove, or was it plug in?
It was plugged in. It was plugged in. And we had the Mr. Coffee makers at home, so that probably a 12 cup maybe.
Yeah.
And then it was funny because a lot of those coffee pots, we'd try to save coffee and make a half a pot, and we never thought it tasted the same as if you made a full pot every time. Right or wrong, I don't know, but it's funny how that gets in your head.
Yeah. I just remember those percolators. They make such hot coffee. The coffee it would always burn you. I didn't drink the coffee, but they would use it to make the hot chocolate, and it was just so hot in those percolators.
Yeah. Well, I guess there is something to putting ice in coffee. I don't like to do it because once it starts going cold, then it goes cold quickly.
Yeah.
And so I don't chug it down as fast as I used to. My system, I just have to take things slower when I take it in now. So I have to go to the microwave quite a bit today and at school and stuff. Yeah, at bathroom breaks and go down to the microwave and heat it up. So yeah.
So Greg, what after high school, graduated in Oklahoma, what did you do then?
I went directly to the University of Illinois.
Oh, wow.
And majored in ag communications. My goal was in high school to become a breed representative for a swine breed. And I really wanted to be a representative of the Hampshire breed. And so that was a goal. I just admired those people that worked for them. And that's what I wanted to do. But that was in the early 80s. And in the mid 80s, things started changing big time in agriculture.
Oh, really?
And there were a lot of cuts made. Farms got smaller, hog farmers getting bigger, less and less farmers. And so those jobs that I'd always had my eye on, they vanished pretty much.
Wow.
They were still there, but it was, there wasn't that entry level like there was when I was growing up where you could work your way through right off the bat. And so I thought, well, maybe even radio might be good, and ag radio and magazine article writing, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of that's what I majored in. And I learned a lot from them. Little did I know I'd be using that knowledge in writing and trying to teach sixth graders to write, but that was where I was after the next 4 years. And so graduated from there in 85.
A lot of studying, a lot of coffee.
A lot of coffee. That was when they came out with those energy drinks, I think. I'd never heard of them. Not energy drinks, but those little 5-hour shots of high caffeine, whatever. And I tried a couple, or they called no-dos. That's what they were.
No-dos.
No-dos.
Yeah.
I tried that one time for a late night study, and I said, never again. Were just, couldn't do it. So, yeah.
So graduated U of I.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Well, it was a good place. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I lived at Neighbor House, which is an agricultural fraternity, and it was a cooperative. So the house bills were low. We did all the cooking and cleaning ourselves. We were on a rotation, and it taught you responsibility. It taught you everything that, your mom or parents did for you whenever you were, growing up, that, now you've got to do it and do it well, because otherwise you have 34 or 5 other guys breathing down your neck that you didn't do your job. And it was a great place to live. And it was put studying first. It also had a athletics component to it. It had a religious component to it. We had to be an involved member of a church. And so it was really a good fit. It really was. So I was there 3 years. In my 4th year, some of us that were freshmen together and pledge class together, we moved into a bottom floor of a house about a block and a half away. So we were still connected with the fraternity, but we were able to get out on our own that senior year and kind of see what it was like without having so many people around all the time. So that was a very good experience.
Oh, that does sound awesome.
So on the judging team there too, for the livestock judging team. That was probably one of the most enjoyable things of that's lasted me, throughout my career.
What would you judge?
We did hogs, cattle, and sheep.
So would they be brought in by other people, or how did that work?
We usually went to a big show, and then they would save. Yeah, and we would go to big shows, and they would set up rings to evaluate, and so you would turn in your placings, and and this is also subjective that whoever's judging that day, but there was usually a kind of a path that the judges stayed on, and you knew what was the trend for that time. And then also we would have to give reasons. So, even if we didn't place them the way the judge did, you'd get a chance to go in on some of the classes and explain to whoever was listening to reasons why you placed them that, and try to convince them. And so it was a very, very learning thing that you use the rest of your life.
Did you ever do state fair?
Judging at the state fair? We didn't do it there. We did kind of in 4-H maybe one time, but usually the fairs that we did this at were national shows. So like Kansas City, Louisville, the National Barrel Show at Austin, Minnesota, Keystone International out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
So we traveled a lot. Went to Ohio State, and that was an experience.
Yeah.
The Ohio State, the on there. I didn't realize that it was that prominent until we judged out there. You better put the on when you were in Ohio, or you get thrown out. So, yeah. I don't put it on there now, but yeah,
that's our rival.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So what after college? What did you what happened?
Wanted to go back home and farm a little bit, and my dad was wise man. He said, "You better get out on your own, get a job before you see if you want to do this for the rest of your life." And I was a little hurt because I thought, "Oh, you've taught me well, Dad. I can make it in the hog industry.
Right.
I can do that." And so I went and started buying hogs as a hog buyer, training to buy hogs for IBP in Iowa, Storm Lake, Iowa. And so I was out there it was over the winter, a few months, and our philosophies weren't the same. I grew up a producer. Now you're a buyer, and the ways of the world, they teach you to buy as much as you can get for as little amount as possible. And I couldn't do it. Because we used to be the poor farmer trying to get as much as you could, and I couldn't do some of the things that not that it was dishonest necessarily or anything. It's just I didn't have the heart for it. I just couldn't do it.
Especially if your heart was in that.
Yeah.
It seemed to be a common thing. My dad, good job for a good company with good benefits.
Right.
That seemed to be like an 80s thing.
Yeah. And Dad warned me, said, you don't want to do the physical work all the time because you are going to get older.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he told me that. And I didn't believe it at the time. I thought, I'll go. And my dad passed away young. He was 61, just a year older than I am now, with cancer. And but he was strong as a horse until right at the end. And so that advice always stuck in the back of my mind whenever I was working there. I went on to work for 2 or 3 other big hog producers where I managed the 700-800 sows.
Oh, wow.
Worked for a purebred breeder that had 350 sows, and that was a good experience because I got to travel a lot to Texas and Oklahoma, delivered and sold a lot of breeding stock and show pigs. And so that opened my eyes to that Southwest area and agriculture and how they did it in the show arena. And it was completely different than the Midwest. And so that was all within a matter of, 4, 5, 6 years that
sounds like you got to travel a bunch. And
yeah, it was good. It was good. And see how commercial guys really ran things, because you got thrown in right away just because of your passion for pigs, and still have that passion,
right?
Just not for a living, which is probably a good thing. I was got married down there, and had our oldest daughter, and that marriage ended after about 5 years. So our oldest daughter, she grew up in a split family, and how that is. And I remember thinking, how in the world is anything good going to come out of this? Because it was very painful time. And years later, then it dawned on me, God knows what he's doing, because now you see so many kids in class, and that's why. You understand what they're going through by watching, what your own child did. And so that was kind of a different section of my life, it seems like there. So then moved back up and was going to try to raise hogs with Dad. And I was subbing at the time too, and went back to school, and I love subbing. And so by my low 30s, I was going back to school to get my teaching degree. So I spent another 2 years in college
What
to get
college
my
was that?
at the University of Illinois at Springfield.
Springfield. Yeah.
Yes, and some at Lincoln Land to get some basics out.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was 27, 8, 9 years ago. There,
So
those 2 or 3
what
years.
appealed to you teaching?
Whenever I started subbing a little bit, it was just the kids were just anybody that showed them some interest. It was just an attachment, and subbing kind of was it was deceiving because you didn't have all the extra responsibilities. You could spend more time getting to know the kids, and it was just an attraction to do that because, all of a sudden you became more interested in the sports or the extra activities they did.
Right.
And it was just a draw. And I thought, this is it. And it has been.
Wow.
Not that there's not been some days, but
Yeah.
every day you're glad that you have that job. And that's a blessing. That's a blessing to find it.
Kind of stumbled upon it maybe, or just...
Sure. In high school, I thought, maybe I'd want to be an ag teacher. You know, that was always a possibility.
Yeah, I can see that.
And but this just kind of worked out that I wanted to be, a middle school teacher. I knew that from subbing. I didn't want the littler kids that were so dependent, so needy.
Right.
But then I did like juniors and seniors, but I thought, I don't know if I want to handle that all.
Yeah.
And the grade I'm in now, 6th grade, 6th and 7th was awesome subbing because they didn't think they knew it all yet, but they were still learning to be more independent. And so it's just a good fit.
Where'd you sub at?
I started down at
Marissa, Illinois?
Illinois, before I moved back up. And I started there. And then whenever I moved back to start raising hogs, 3 school districts, Hillsboro, which had Coffeen, and then subbed at Witt, which Witt was then part of Hillsboro yet. Then whenever I was there, and then Nokomis, and Nokomis you could only have, I think, 90 days maybe. I think it was a 90-day certificate maybe, and you'd fill those up pretty quickly. And so then you had to go to others because you could only sub 90 days in a school year, and there's 170 some days or something of school days. So
that had to be pretty exciting going back to school, getting that degree. So did you graduate again?
So
2 degrees.
Well, my education degree and then ag communications degree. Okay. So still don't have my master's. So
so then you applied. Was teaching jobs hard to get back then?
They were. That's an interesting story. First job I applied at was at Nokomis, but it wasn't in my field. It was for 9th grade specialty math for some kids that are struggling.
Yeah.
And they told me, we want to hire you, but your certificate doesn't match that. And as soon as something comes up, a few weeks later, I found out I was working for the Cooperative Extension Service on a summer job and doing some 4-H work. And they said, the teacher in Raymond in 6th grade is retiring.
Wow.
And so, okay, well, I might go ahead and apply there. It was the only other place I ever applied. My wife applied too, and we were just dating at the time, my second wife, and Dee, and we were dating. We met in college my second go-around.
Okay.
And we both applied, and I think there were between 60 and 70 applicants for one teaching job. And we were the final 2. And so old Don Bergdahl was the principal, and he was doing the hiring. And if you knew Don, he was bald. He was very professional. He's somebody that I admire greatly.
Yeah.
He only was there 2 more years before he retired, and in those 2 years, I learned as much from him him and Vern Pinkston, as much from them two as anybody in the course of teaching. But Dee and I were the last 2 interviews. I went in, came back out. He'd offered me the job, Dee was waiting to go in the second time, and I spoke to her, and she spoke to me back, and she went into her part of the interview, and Mr. Bergdolt said, "So did you know the other applicant, Mr. Neisler?" She said, "Yeah." And said, "Is that a good yeah, or is that a bad one?" He said, "Well, I hope it's a good one because we've been dating for 3 years."
Oh.
And so he immediately turned beet red.
Oh.
And he said, "I'm in between a rock and a hard place here." He goes, no. One of us is going to have a job. We knew only one of us could. And if we were the only two, this was a pretty good feeling.
Right.
And so it worked out. Dee said, "Oh, Mr. Pinkston and I we'd have butted heads too much. You two are too much alike and got along too well. It all worked out." And so, yeah, so that was an interesting story. So it was a lot different than it is today, where, you're really searching for
hard to find teachers nowadays.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. It's, I had an administrator just tell me not too long ago, if you get one on some of these, they're probably going to get the job.
Has your class sizes gone up or down?
At Raymond, they've gone down from when I started. This is my 26th year, but they've kind of steadied off. They've steadied, but they've probably dropped by 10 students. So instead of having, 45 in a class, 40 to 45, you're having 30 to 35 usually, something like that. Yeah.
So you teach English to 6th grade.
Yes.
Is that all you teach?
It's ELA is both English and reading together.
Okay.
Several years ago, I don't always agree with everything that's sent down the pipeline, but it was talked about that those two subjects need to be tied together. But what happened was, instead of having 2 class periods, they combined it into one. So now you're teaching twice the material in half the time. And so luckily, after a year of that, we come up with a plan where we could get a period and a half instead of 1 period. And so we had math and English have a period and a half at our level at 6th grade.
Right.
And then it gets us close to the same amount of time we have with those students.
Okay.
So you just tried to work with the system.
So at 6th grade, what are they doing at that age? Are they writing?
We're trying to get them to write.
Okay.
And that's a challenge. That's an area that's very difficult because there's a lot of thoughts in their minds, but trying to get them to express it in a clear way on paper is very difficult. And you have to just start at the basics with sentences and making sentences and then gradually string it together. That's a big challenge. And some kids are naturally gifted with that, and others, when they reread it out loud to themselves or to to me or to who, or a partner, however we do it, they get a clear picture that maybe this isn't as easy as it looks. And it's not an easy skill. It's not. I mean, it's just not. And so teaching writing is very difficult. You just have to meet kids where they are, and then try to evaluate on that basis of where they are they making improvements. Because
can they read better than they can write more? Or
it goes hand in hand, no doubt about that. Yeah.
Like 6th
if the
grade,
more they read
books, we had to read. I remember reading, like, that was the first introduction to big books.
Sure. And that's what we do with the novel thing. Now, as the years have went by, a lot of younger teachers do a lot more novel work, but some kids still in 6th grade haven't read a complete book. And so by us doing it together, they automatically roll their eyes, turn up their noses. We're not going to enjoy this. And one of my goals since day one teaching was you're going to give books a chance. And at the end of the year, most of the students have. And the reason that was a goal is I didn't like to read either. I'm still not a big reader. It's just you see the value and appreciation in it. And that's what you want them to have, just to appreciate things, even if they're not in their interest, level of interest.
I can imagine grading is hard.
It is. It is. It's easier over the years.
Yeah.
It just experiences a good teacher. It really is to meet them where they are. I remember not too long ago ran across a former student, and told them that they'd have to forgive me because I was a young teacher at the time. And, oh no, you were fine. No, you look back and it was a learning experience.
I can imagine how much you've learned.
So,
do you find you teach more now, maybe, or as opposed to a first-year teacher? Or
how do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Maybe more in depth, or
it just depends on the class.
Each class is different.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I try to match what they're interested in. It's, because you hook different people on by saying something, and you can see sparks in kids, and all of a sudden this is an area where we can go and explore. And that's one of the things I've learned the most is giving up some of that over an instruction and letting them take off and learn and discover things on their own and teach me, because, I'm not embarrassed to say I know nothing about technology. It's very difficult. So the kids enjoy taking that and becoming the, educator of me. And then even if I do know some of it, okay, you guys can still do it. And, and it's a good thing. And
what's some things they've taught you?
Oh, patience is one of them. That was always my worst thing, is patience. They have taught me that, but just different things on how to, males and females don't think alike. And so, that's been a huge thing for me, is to understand the emotions and the things, that are maybe variances between personalities. And, I don't know, just things that pop up. I can't think of anything major. It's just, they just teach you how to deal with situations a lot better. And that patience thing is a biggie. It's just understanding you're meeting people where they are. And I don't think I did a very good job of that early on. And and some days are rougher than others, but hopefully that's always in the back of my mind. I hope my people understand that are in class that you try to meet them where they are and still push them.
Well, that is
still push them.
Important.
So sometimes the system doesn't let you do exactly like that because of legalities and so forth. But, you're wanting them to grow and learn as a person. And what we teach in class isn't as much as learning how to learn and how to get along and how to survive. And
that's
and
probably
do
half
it
the job some days.
Like,
did I teach them anything today?
And that's it. That's it. So
but you may have taught them other things. So.
Yeah, and when you hear things, when you talk to people, or you get a surprise visit from somebody, or a surprise email of people you haven't seen or heard from in 20 years, and then all of a sudden they pop up, and the things they remember, some of them I remember, some of them I don't.
No idea.
It's interesting. Wow. It's interesting, but it always sparks a lot of new memories that maybe they don't remember that I do, or they remember that I don't, and it's always fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there any other things you do around the school?
Well, I coached softball for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And in high school. I coached at Lincolnwood for 20 years in junior high in softball. And I still as an assistant coach at Morrisonville, since Lincolnwood and Morrisonville went together in the co-op for sports. And so I still do softball for that. So that was a huge part that I did. I still run the clock for basketball games, and so I really enjoy doing that with Mr. Pinkston. Vern Pinkston does a
Tell me a little bit
job.
about what's one of the most stressful moments at a basketball game.
Just making sure everything's showing up right on the clock, because everybody can see that. And, if you make a mistake, everybody knows it. Don't get clock started on time. Don't get it shut off. I remember one time we were playing Nokomis. And so Nokomis and Lincolnwood are big rivals.
Oh, yeah.
And we were at a game at home, and we were up, I believe, that game. We were up, and Lincolnwood was, and it was the end of the game, and they just put in the second hand, or the seconds ticking down like tenths of a second.
Oh, yeah.
And so when it got under a minute, then all of a sudden, not only is it showing the seconds, but it's showing the tenths of seconds. And it was down under 10 seconds, and my hands on the thumb, I always run my buzzer or the clock hand with my thumb, and I had it on there ready to press, and of course it's loud in there, and I thought I heard a whistle, but it was probably a shoe squeaking, and it's hard to hear that whenever the louder it gets. And I stopped it, and I started it again, but you wouldn't notice that if just the seconds were going. But one Nokomis assistants spotted that, and of course he was on me, and I said, "You guys are losing. If I shut the clock off, it's giving you more time."
Right.
And so that was an interesting one, and you just don't want to make a mistake.
Right.
You just don't, because, mess up the score. I remember one time, Vern's a patient guy to work with for doing the book there, and he's a great teacher and a guy to work with. And I remember training, he was also tough, and you don't see that. He didn't treat me that way as too much, but this time he did, and he said, "Get that foul off there." 10 fouls was into the double bonus,
Yeah.
and I accidentally put 11. I forgot that was the 10th one, and I just added another foul, and I got 11 up there and said, "You don't embarrass a team like that." And learning from the Hall of Famer, it's important, and you never forget it.
Are you still both doing it?
Yes,
yeah.
It's
getting ready to start up again, isn't it?
He's been out. He had an operation, and so hopefully he's healed up and ready to go. And basketball season's getting here and getting close, and so hopefully he's healed up and ready to go, and maybe we can spend another year on the bench together. It's it brings things to light that you don't stay the same age.
Right. Do you have coffee before a basketball game?
No. Usually bottled water sitting there on the there. So no. So.
All right. Well, Greg, it's just been a sure pleasure having you here tonight. I appreciate everything you do as a teacher, and your stories are amazing, and I just had a really good time tonight.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. This is really a unique experience, and I have a feeling you're going to have a lot of quality guests coming up following this old guy.
It's my way of showing thank you, and I just really appreciate what you do. It's a really hard job, and just thank you.
Well, I know you have connections with some teachers and probably have some insight in there from different, and I don't know if any of the feelings have come around the same, but it's a very rewarding job.
Yes.
And I feel like by having a job that I enjoy, almost each and every day that you go, that's been a blessing from God. And I feel like I've been blessed more than, because it's just been something you really like to do. I got to watch my dad do a job that he loved to do.
Yeah.
And, I'm just thankful I could do that.
Yeah, that's very special.
It is. And so,
my dad was a coal miner, and he loved being a coal miner.
Sure.
And when he got laid off, that was the saddest I'd seen him. And I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Sure.
He just missed it.
Yeah. And so, it's a good thing to find that.
Thank you for everything you've done over there. And I'm just so thankful that we have teachers like you that are doing such a good job. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for all you do.
All right. See you later.
Okay. Thank you.